What's up everyone? Again, we're going to do another bird's eye view comparison of the iPhone 7 Plus and the XS Max. Now I've already done the 7 Plus versus these iPhones, except this one, so I haven't even talked about the XS Max yet, except in that one video that got demonetized, which really made me mad. But we're going to do a bird's eye view. Like I said, this is not going to be a full comparison. This is going to be an impressions, basically what I think. I had the 7 Plus as my daily driver, so I totally understand what you guys are going through, which phone you should get. Now I'm going to be completely 100% honest. If you have the money, go for the XS Max, okay? Go get it. There's really no point for you to even get a 7 Plus if you have unlimited money to spend, because the XS Max is 100% a better of a phone than what the 7 Plus is. And the reason being is because you're still getting that huge size and you're getting a bigger screen at the same time. And if you have an iPhone 7 Plus, you most likely like having a bigger phone. So I would just say 100% get the XS Max. But if you're in the middle and you don't know which one you should get or if you should upgrade and you don't want to necessarily spend all that time on the money and all that stuff, this is what I will pretty much say, okay? If the iPhone XS Max is a huge advantage is probably the screen. I think it's really awesome. The iPhone 10 had an amazing screen, and the iPhone XS Max really only, utilizes that screen even more. And quite possibly with iOS 13 we're getting a bigger redesign, and I believe the iPhone XS Max is going to be able to utilize all those features the most because it does technically have the bigger screen. So it has an inch of a bigger screen than the iPhone 7 Plus. So the 7 Plus had a 5.5-inch screen. The iPhone XS Max has a 6.5-inch screen. And like I said, it's Super AMOLED. The PPI is also higher, and the screen is also clocked higher on the iPhone XS Max. So that's a huge advantage you have going there. You have Force Touch on both. You have True Tone display on the iPhone XS Max where you don't have it on the 7 Plus. And you also have dual SIM support on the iPhone XS Max where you do not have that on the iPhone 7 Plus. And another huge advantage is that it has IP68 dust and water resistance, where the 7 Plus is only IP67 dust and water resistant. So technically speaking, I mean, both will, if you splash some water on both phones, it'll be able to take it. If you throw your phone in the pool on an iPhone XS Max, technically you'll be able to handle it better on an iPhone XS Max than on an iPhone 7 Plus. So that is a huge advantage that the XS Max has. Another huge advantage that it has from a bird's eye view is that it'll be able to handle more iOS versions. So right now it's getting iOS 12. Obviously it's going to get all those other versions from like 5 or 6 years from now. But the iPhone 7 Plus got iOS 10. It's getting iOS 12. It's going to get 13 and 14, I think. And then it's going to stop at 14, where the iPhone XS Max is pretty much just getting started. So that is an advantage that the iPhone XS Max has. Another interesting thing to note is the difference in the chipsets. Now, the iPhone 7 Plus had the Apple A10 Fusion chip, where the iPhone XS Max has the Apple A12 Bionic chip. And in terms of the raw specs, I will say definitely the iPhone XS Max is better, but that's because it's way more expensive than it, and it's supposed to be better. You have a hexa-core processor on the XS Max, or only a quad-core processor on the 7 Plus. But here's the main difference, which really surprised me. The iPhone 7 Plus has 3 gigabytes of RAM, but the XS Max has 4 gigabytes of RAM, and that increase in 1 gigabyte isn't really like a huge increase, I will say. 3 gigabytes of RAM on an iOS device is still a lot. In fact, 2 gigabytes of RAM on an iOS device is still a lot. The iPhone 8 has 2 gigabytes of RAM, and I think that's more than enough to handle whatever you're going to throw at it. But 4 gigabytes of RAM is even better, so it'll be able to handle more apps, opening speeds, all that stuff is going to be better on the iPhone XS Max than on the iPhone 7 Plus. Now here's the interesting thing. Both phones do have dual camera setups on the back, and they're both clocked at 12 megapixel sensors for both of them. They both have OIS. The secondary camera on the iPhone XS Max does have OIS as well, and you also have optical zoom and all that good stuff. So technically speaking, you will have a better camera on the iPhone XS Max than on the iPhone 7 Plus. But another interesting thing to note is that you can also shoot more video resolutions on the iPhone XS Max, whereas on the iPhone 7 Plus you don't really have all those options. You can shoot 4K at 30 frames per second, but on the iPhone XS Max you can shoot 4K at 30 and 60 frames per second, and you can shoot 1080p videos at 240 frames per second, while on the iPhone 7 Plus you can only shoot at 120 frames per second. Is that going to mean a lot to you? That's a question you guys have to ask yourself. But for me personally, I would be perfectly okay with an iPhone 7 Plus camera sensor too. But like I said, that is something you kind of have to ask yourself. Another cool advantage for the iPhone 7 Plus is you can shoot 1080p at 60 frames per second, whereas on the iPhone 7 Plus you can only shoot 1080p at 30 frames per second on the front camera. They're both 7 megapixels. I'm pretty sure the iPhone XS Max is going to have a better camera sensor overall, but I do think the iPhone 7 Plus is a pretty close second place. Now, quick thing to say, the iPhone 7 Plus does have a fingerprint sensor, where the iPhone XS Max has Face ID, and that's kind of a personal preference to you, whichever one you like. But another advantage that the iPhone XS Max has is that it does have wireless charging, so that is definitely a cool thing, and I would really recommend wireless charging over not having it, so that is a cool advantage. And speaking about charging and battery life and all that stuff, the iPhone XS Max will technically have a better battery life than on the iPhone 7 Plus, but I'm surprised it's not by much actually, but I do understand because it has a bigger and brighter screen. But based off these specs, I would probably say that the iPhone XS Max has a 3200 mAh battery, where the iPhone 7 Plus has a 2900 mAh battery. So overall battery size has increased and battery life has increased as well. So that is a really cool thing, and I'm actually kind of glad they did that. So overall, should you go and spend your money on the iPhone XS Max? I will say if you want it, go ahead and get it. Honestly, like there's nothing really that tells me you shouldn't get it, but I do think it's pretty expensive for what you're getting. If you currently have an iPhone 7 Plus, I would almost 100% recommend you to keep it for at least another year, just because it is an upgrade for sure. But I just think it's so much money, and I think next year they're going to go down in price. But another thing to keep in mind is that the iPhone 10 is also a very good deal, and that's around $600 now in the used market. So I would almost 100% recommend you guys to go get an iPhone 10 if you don't even have a 7 Plus right now, if you have a phone that's even lower model than this. But in terms of both, I mean, I would say 7 Plus, keep it if you're there. But if you have something lower than a 7 Plus, get an iPhone 10. But if you have the money to spend, definitely get an iPhone XS Max. And that is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or concerns, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber we get really does count. So it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, all that stuff is down there. I would really appreciate if you guys can go and check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.